today we're going to talk about this concept of difficult communication. Now, be aware this is a pretty big topic and we've got 40 minutes. So here's the trick. How do we do this in a way that gives you some thinking you haven't had before? Because I know you all have experience at this. So let's see how we go. These are my details now, which is probably important for you guys to know. So if you do want to get a hold of me, it is still possible, as I'm still associated with PEPA, and I will be doing some more work for them down the track. So these are my details now. You can email me, you can call me, you can do whatever you like. My company is called Coach by Sue. Pretty self-explanatory. What I am is I'm a health and wellness coach and a life coach. So as always, we must acknowledge the lands to which we come from. Today I'm in Turrbal lands, but particularly this part is from the Warpay tribe. So that's where I'm coming to you from today. Always we have our disclaimers and our copyrights in. That's so that you know you're free to use this material. This material has been created and fully funded by the federal government to create free materials for people to use in their workplaces and their spaces. So you can use this material if you want to integrate it into education with your teams. You just have to make sure that you reference the PEPA national team in all of the work that you do borrow. When we meet today, it's really important that we presence, and this is a pivotal part of leadership and mentoring. So as leaders and mentors, when we come together, we always come with this open mind. So we come, and it's Otto Scharmer's theory of presencing, and it's saying that when we come together, we come with an open mind that is curious, we have an open heart that is compassionate, and we have an open will that is courageous. Therefore, we have the ability to not hold judgment, to sit and listen quietly with people and learn and understand. Because when we sit quietly and compassionately without judgment with people, we have better outcomes. And that's the foundation of nearly everything with mentoring and leadership, when it's done well, is what I want to highlight there. So today we've got this idea of difficult communication, and then these points of why do we perceive communication as difficult? Because that's really important. We're communicating every day, but some of it we see as difficult and some of it's okay. I wonder what that's about. I'm going to have a quick look at that. Why do we want to control everything our way? We'll get to the topic of what that's all about. How can we think differently about difficult communication? And then finally, some models to help us have some difficult conversations if they so pop up in our lives, which they often do. Love this quote here by George Bernard Shaw, which is just really simple and talks about the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. Because sometimes when we are getting stuck in communication, or we've got this idea that something happened, we go, well, I said that. And then the other person will often say, no, you didn't. And so there we have the illusion, because we've got two people who might have been talking at each other, but not really communicating. So there's a difference going on there. So as I mentioned before, we have 40 minutes today. There is a wealth of information out there. If you go to Amazon and do a quick input of difficult communication resources, you will get so many hitbacks. Like there is thousands and thousands of books containing how to do difficult communication. There is resources online. So I've tried to filter a few of those for you today as well. And at the end of today's session, there's a link session and there's a reference section where I've tried to find you some really good resources that you could watch later, just to give you another view, another way of looking at things, another perspective is what I'm trying to say there. Perspectives are really important, and we're going to talk about that today in communication. communication as well. So let's go on to the next slide and look at this idea of why is communication difficult. And so here I'll just ask for a bit of your input as well, because in all of the literature that I could go through, and I've read a lot on this, and I've actually done some really great learning around difficult communication as well. And these are some of the reasons. You can probably look at this list now and go, yeah, I get it. In my day, there is so many conversations. Yep. And some of them are hard and some of them are easy. Skills. Everyone there is a variability out there of skills, I find. Some people are really high functioning communicators. They just, you watch them and it's this beautiful, effortless process. It's like this magic is happening out of their mouth and the world is beautiful. And I don't know, they're the masters. Okay, so they're amazing. And then we've got our novices who are progressing, aren't they? And then, and then sometimes depending on the busyness of our day, we vary between being a master and a novice in a day on a continuum, don't we? There's not enough time in a day and sometimes we've got too much going on. We work in a volatile place called health. Who agrees with this one? I think it's a volatile place because it's high emotion. We've got patients who are sick, families who are in trauma, patients who are in trauma as well. We've also got, just that this sickness and people, are sitting on a cusp of potentially dying. So it's emotive. We have busy lives. We have so much going on. So every time we're presenting and turning up for work, there is a lot in us. And so are we mastering our own body and our own personality so that we can compartmentalize who we are when we turn up and we presence at work, so that stuff that's in us doesn't take our energy and flow on to the other people we're around. I also see people who do that beautifully, and I see other people who by the time they come to work, they've got no energy left for work. So you can see how tiring that would be. How tiring would that be when you're already starting a day and you're tired? So how do you have the energy to communicate well? I'm sure you could really add value to this conversation, because I'm sure you're working with people every day who you can tell are tired. There's also cultural context within our communication as well. There is, the obvious things, where it is very clearly another culture. But then there is all the nuances of the things that we aren't visible. I don't know if someone has gender identity issues unless I ask. Natalie, did you want to say something? No. I don't know someone's needs unless I check in and I ask. And so how often do we check in and ask people about their cultural needs? I mean, I don't know that we're doing it loads. There is, I also included in this our organisational culture, because in my journeys, when I go and do mentoring workshops across the lands with lots of different people, I'm actually hearing a little bit more about this impactful organisational culture that is out there, that people are feeling like the organisation isn't supportive enough of them to have to sit with someone, sit side by side with a patient and their family and have a conversation about health, because time isn't there. It's not afforded. So can you, I'm hoping that, can you see that that's an organisational culture that's something that we need to, we can influence as leaders. By all means, don't feel that that's something that is happening to you. I think that that's really important, that we push back sometimes as leaders, and we let the organisation know that that's happening. Then there is our personal perspectives. Goodness, they can be vast. Once again, I've worked with some people in my history where their biases have been quite large, and I haven't felt psychologically safe enough with some of them to actually say, hey, it's not okay to speak to people like that. Could you not do that? And I haven't had the courage. I mean, admittedly, like, that was when I was a little bit more of a novice, and I wasn't really as confident as the person I am today, I guess. But I can forgive that now, because I have come to a place where I go, you know what, I notice it now, and I do check in with people. And there's a lady, I've put a link in at the end of this session for you to watch today, and she talks about the two words of inquiry and courage that form the velvet hammer. So it's a way of talking to people that really lets them know you're challenging them, but in a nice way, with the velvet hammer. So you use the concept of saying, so I'm noticing that you're doing this, and I'm wondering if you're okay, or why that would be happening. So what you're doing is you're noticing the behavior, and you're wondering if that person's okay, because that will do two things. That will actually alert the person to, oh, well, I always speak like that. Why can't I speak like that? And then that's your cue to jump in there and go, oh, okay. Well, I've never noticed that before. But what I feel like when I see you speak to someone like that is, I think you're taking their psychological safety away. I think I would be nervous to speak to you if you spoke to me like that. And I wonder if that's really the message you were trying to get across when you were talking to that person. Did you really want them to feel scared of you? Is that what you were going for? And, and to their credit, a few people I've had those conversations with have actually gone, oh, no, that actually wasn't my goal here. So, oh, well, that's really interesting. I wonder now if we should just do a check-in with that staff member to make sure they're okay. And I think that's just a really nice way of, maybe, and it lets that person know you care about them. You're not there to smash them. You're not there to, you don't want to take them out. You don't want to send them to HR with a cross against their name. That's not what you're there for. You're actually just trying to check in, support, and go, you know what, we have a bit of a different, I'd like to think we have a bit of a safer way of speaking to each other here. So could we do it differently? And I think that's that organizational component part, which we can go back and really do a bit of culture change there as well. I'm talking a lot here. I just want to, and I can see lots of nods happening, but I just want to check in and see, would anybody in the room today be willing to try something like that?
Yeah. It was like I dropped a pebble in a big pond, and it took 3 weeks for the water to settle.
Exactly. And that's why communication can be difficult, because of all of these influencing factors that come into it. And all of this slide is just a snapshot of the drop in the ocean of things that are going on in the background of 2 people having a conversation. So when it's 4 people, oh my goodness, look out. It can just go to crazy town. So you get this, you understand all the inputs that are coming into a communication. So having just a look at this list, I mean, I was trying to put into one slide about, 50 years of learning and 300,000 resources. So is there anything else that you notice as a mentor that you it's your little tweak when you're communicating with someone that I haven't put on this list, actually.
Just looking for the non-verbal.
Yes, good one. That's actually a really good one, isn't it? It's about that observation skill, isn't it? It's about what are you observing. So no, that's a really good omission of mine. I'm always into that emotional, psychological part, but there is just that observational part, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's also dealing with patients that, you know, might have MND who can't communicate, or deaf people that can't communicate. So
exactly. No, thank you. And so for those watching along at home, yeah, that's a really good addition from Andrea. So thank you, Andrea. And the other, and I put one of my favorite quotes on this page as well, is that I think sometimes in difficult communication, and certainly when I do a lot of mentoring, and I do a fair bit of mentoring support where people call me just to debrief a particular situation that might have happened to them and that they got caught up in. And I find that when I have those debriefing conversations with people and they explain the perspective of what happened, and we recount the scenario and we go through it all, and then we reflect and we look at the perspectives that might have sat in the story. And I find that often when I'm then doing the counselling component and doing that mentoring component, and I'm saying to people, what is your bugbear with what happened? What is the thing that's caused you to pick up the phone and call me to have a conversation? And they were like, but they're not doing this and they're not doing that and they're not, and it seems like there is a lot of rules that the person I'm speaking to on the phone is sort of saying, well, this other person isn't doing these things. So this quote from Tony Robbins to me always reminds me to really sit back and go, if I'm having a conversation and I want it to go a particular way, that's because that's my rules, right? And it's based on my expertise, my perspective, my culture, my all of those things. So they're my rules. And so if I want something to go a particular way or a thing to go a particular way, I have to really explain the rules well. I have to communicate them clearly and get feedback so that I know the other person really understands where we're going. And so I can't expect someone to do things my way and follow my rules and do things my way and follow my locus of control if I haven't explained it. So that's where sometimes when I'm having some sort of coaching and mentoring conversations to sort of help someone with a perspective shift, it does come back to that, well, why do they have to follow your way? Is there a compromise here? Is there, is your way the right way? Do you even know that? I don't know. So sometimes that's where we have to sit with reflection for a little bit and check in and just go, is the other person even aware of what the problem is, or is aware that there was an issue, is there an awareness happening there? So that's why I've popped those quotes on here on this slide today as well. But let's get to the next one. So that's where we get to that point of where I'm sometimes supporting people with their conversation needs, is because somebody's trying to control a conversation. They're trying to control how another person behaves, acts, is. We're trying to exert our locus of control onto them. So as mentors, is that what we do? Are we trying to control others? Is that our job as a mentor? No. And that's, I think, why I love working in the mentoring space, is because we're not after control. We're after learning. We're after support. We're after a utopian place where everyone is like us, where we're all learning and we're all supporting each other. And I'm learning from you, you're learning from me. It's this two-way thing always going on. And where we've got open hearts, we've got open minds, and we've got open will, and we're compassionate, and we're caring, and we're curious. And that's what I love about being in a mentoring space, because that's where we find people. Yeah. So I think it's really important to notice when you're working with people who may be consistently having difficult communication scenarios. Have you worked with people who consistently you do let them vent about communication difficulties that they're having in their spaces? Yeah, I can see nods there. So this is another thing that I've encountered in my history as well, is I would have some staff who would consistently have combat out in the ranks, and so when we would sit and we'd talk about it, I used to like using this type of imagery with them, and I'd sit with them sometimes just as a bit of a self check-in before we'd get the conversation happening. And okay, so this was a difficult situation that happened with you. This was something that you didn't feel comfortable with when you were having a conversation with someone. If I gave you this spectrum here and I asked you to sit with it for a minute and go, well, you didn't have a good time in the communication conversation. What is it that what can you control? And so I'd let them sit with this and I'd get them to have a look. So I'm not sure if you can see this very well, and the slides are up in the learning management system, but what we have here is the things you can control in a difficult conversation. So this part here is how open and curious you are. The second section here is how intentional you are about your impact. So this is a really good one. I like this one because it actually asks the person to go, how is my impact? When I presence with someone, what is my impact? Am I really positive, or am I coming negatively to the meeting? Interesting. Are there boundaries? Did someone step over a boundary that we need to recreate? The stories. Did we tell ourselves the story so much in our head that the story changed and now it's not true? That's something else we have a habit of. The words we use as well. The words, oh man, there is so much impact in the words we use. I find that you've got to be, and yeah, I think that's a really important thing, that we don't check in with people sometimes when we hear words they use. So some people use words, and I had it in a meeting once where someone asked me to do something and I went, oh, look, don't ask me to do that today. You can't spring that on me, like, oh my gosh. And so what I did was I really reacted to the point where that person felt that I was disrespectful. So so they stewed on it for 24 hours. And the next day when I saw them at work, they came to me and they said, so you were really rude yesterday in that meeting when I asked you just to check something and you made such a big thing about it that, that you couldn't possibly check it and you'd have to know more and all those sorts of things. So it makes me think you don't trust me. And I went, oh, okay, well, firstly, thank you for having a conversation. And that happened over 24 hours ago. And what's worrying me is that you've sat for 24 hours thinking that I don't trust you and that and I said, oh, that kind of makes me a bit sad, because I just want to clearly say that I trust you. Sorry, that was probably more about me and what I had going on, because I'm so busy at the moment with that one thing being added to me and that other thing I have to check and do. It just was too overwhelming, and it was like hitting a wall when I got given another thing to do. And she went, is that all? I'm like, but I'm okay. And so then we had a bit of a laugh and a good conversation. But that's what I'm saying. Like, you have to really look at sometimes the words we use, and if you do find someone's words offensive, just check in with them and ask and clarify, because I'm sure it might be a learning curve for them to get another perception of how they're perceived. Can we control how well we listen? Yes, we can definitely control that. Can we control whether to believe every thought we have? Yeah, because not every thought that comes out of my mouth and my head and everything is correct. Okay, I can be shifted. All right. I just have to engage. So I think from this slide, what I'm trying to get people to think on is, when sometimes we're having a difficult conversation, we have to look inwardly and we have to go, is it because I'm trying to control everything here? Is it because I want everything my way? Is that what's going on here? And if it is, well, is my need to control everything my way realistic? May not be. So let's change the goalposts a little bit and take the control out, and then see what the conversation looks like, because it might be a lot easier again. Okay. And I would challenge you, the next time you have that person venting with you who really wants to push their point forward on control, like, oh no, this was difficult because of, just do a little bit of a check-in with them to see what it is what is it that they need to control in the communication to make it their way. And then it's right. But then it could be difficult for the other person. There's the balance. All right. So, which brings us to this point of, well, how could we as leaders and mentors encourage, ourselves to think differently about difficult communication, but also to encourage others to not be afraid of difficult communication, because, and as the literature well points out, there is difficult communication has to happen. It is a rich, beautiful input of learning that we need in our lives, because we can't go through life with happy, positive perspectives every day, because happy, positive perspectives every day won't show us where the things are we need to spend more time thinking on. They won't show us the things we need to be more mindful of. It's not possible with the complexity that we have with humanness. So we need some difficult communication, but I think what we're hoping for is difficult, robust communication that is complementary, not soul destroying, and leaves us with trauma that we can never come back from. Okay, so I'm sure and I'm making an assumption here, we're all older people who've been working in health a while. Can I get a thumbs up if that's true? Yeah. Okay. So at some point, we may have been traumatized by the manager who yelled at us all the time. And I was just having a conversation about this the other day, the manager who used to pull your hair if they didn't like the way you said anything, the manager who used to just push you out of the way to get past you, as opposed to just say, excuse me. The colleague who just was having a bad day, so everyone had to pay. We've all come from a place where we've worked with people like this. So we do have our little bit of trauma that we have from it. So sometimes that's our bias, because just as someone might snap at you and go rah at work, that rears up your own bias and your own trauma history that you might have from being yelled at work. Okay, so that's why reflective practice is so important as a mentor, because we have to revisit some of that negative stuff that we've had happen to us, so that we can go back and go, yeah, that did happen to me, but you know what, I've come on some number of years now, and I'm psychologically a lot more together and I've got this a bit more figured out. And you know what? I've got this. And so I'm not going to let that trigger me anymore. And I'm going to be in control of that. So it's not in control of me. So that's the thing that we get as older leaders and mentors, definitely. But for the younger generation coming through, for some other people who may be our own age, who haven't spent as much time as you guys working on this idea of difficult communication, how can we say, don't be scared of it, it's great, embrace it, love it and want to do it every day, okay? Because here's the trick, the more you do it, the better you get at it, and it's awesome. All right, and you get great outcomes out of it. That's the awesome news. But how can we think about it differently? And here's some ideas. Flip your perspective. I love flipping perspectives. It's my funnest thing ever. So my big question, is it a difficult conversation or is it just a learning opportunity? I think it's always a learning opportunity. I think every time something gets a bit hard, it's because we have to learn another way to move through it. Okay, so I want to take you back to when you were young nurses. Okay, I want to take you back and I want to pop you back in that little uniform. Even for some of you, you might have had a hat. I know I had a hat with my bobby pins on. Did you not have a hat, Andrea? Oh my gosh. How did you not have a hat? I thought that was common, but I was from Queensland, so we're a bit aged.
I've actually only been a nurse for 12 years. So
oh, okay then.
I'm still only a baby nurse, really.
All right, baby nurse. Back in the old days, we used to have these hats that were like heavily starched and they had bobby pins. You used to have to bobby pin them to your head, right? Anyway, so back then, and I remember my biggest hurdle and what I found difficult back then was taking a blood pressure. Okay, I had no idea. There was this, apparently you pumped something up and you did this and you palpated this and then you put it back down and then you then put the stethoscope there on a cube fossa and then you'd pump it back up and then you'd listen and then you'd hear it. Then the sound would come in, which was your systolic pressure, and then the sound would vanish and that was your diastolic pressure. That was the magic, right? Well, apparently. And I knew people who could do it really well. I couldn't. I was not very good at it. And so that was so difficult to me. But then I practiced a lot and then it became nothing. So can you see that this is a very similar skill set? You just have to do it and practice it more. And it becomes something that is just beautiful. It becomes the mastery tool, and you will have, I don't know, do you have people in your world who you see do difficult communication beautifully? Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad, and I want you to experiment with it, guys. And I want you to fall over sometimes. And I want you to pick yourself back up and go, where did I go wrong here? And reflect and bring yourself back to it. And you will have this. And the wonderful thing is that people will see you grow and change and want to learn more from you. And this is how difficult communication really does become a learning opportunity then. And we do get cultural change and we do get people who have better organizational groups. And, managers and leaders who are doing difficult communication every day just seamlessly have better teams. They have greater teams. They have more functional teams because they're known to take on a challenge. They won't just let people get away with bad behavior. They will have a conversation. They won't let it slide. Okay. And that's the sort of teams we want to be a part of. Okay. So this is something that I would encourage you to work with your teams if you have a team or if you're a part of a team. Really work on this concept of flipping perspectives and going, is it difficult or is it a learning opportunity? Is it a chance to ask your question a different way? If there is a particular thing that's stuck and it's not translating for staff and they don't seem to be, you know, shifting, and so that's becoming difficult. Maybe there's something we need to think on differently. Maybe we need to say it, and maybe we need a reframe. Okay, let's think about it that way. Could it be a moment when I you know, sit with someone longer to see how they think? Oh my goodness, what a lovely idea. How about sitting with someone and learning a bit more about how they think? And also it's an opportunity to develop my language skills. Definitely. There is a lot of language and skills that we use every day that we can grow. And you're here today growing yours. So you're already on this path, and I'm always grateful to you guys because I know you're on this, and I thank you for that. But the other thing that comes out of difficult communication I love is that it gives me time to reflect. And it is a reflection where I realize I need a break. Because if I'm the cause of the difficult communication, is it because I'm pooped? And am I doing self-care properly? Am I looking after myself properly? Am I okay? So it's a check-in, a self-check-in even. So that's the beautiful way I think we should flip our perspective to think on difficult communication. Stop making it, maybe even take the word difficult out. Let's have a realistic conversation. There we go. I don't know, but we just need to, you know, get out of our box and just see that there is another way of being with this. Don't be scared of it. You know, don't live in your fear negative mindset. You know, that goes back to a conversation and a hub session from last year where we talked about negative mindsets and living in fear, and difficult communication always holds us in fear. And so that's a negative mindset that's not constructive. And once we sit in that negative mindset, we actually will struggle to leap out. So that's really another way of looking at it too. But I know that a lot of people want some answers. Now, gosh, answers are tough because I don't know if you, in your experience, do you know tools that you've liked to use? Has anybody, like, there's structured tools and they're called, there's an AGAR, there is a CARE tool. There's a few different ones that are acronyms for a flow that you can follow so that you can plan to have a difficult conversation. So you can write out all the steps. Andrea?
Prepared was one of them.
Prepared is a little bit different. It's a communication framework that's actually for just general communication, but you could use it for difficult communication as well, for sure. So you can use these frameworks 100% for sure. But what I've given you, and I've given you these ones here because what I like about them is that they ask you to reflect inwardly before you externally look at someone else. Okay, so it just asks you to do some check-ins with yourself. You know, so for instance, non-violent communication, and I don't know if you're very experienced with it, but what I was able to do, Marshall Rosenberg wrote this type of communication style some time ago, and it's so great now because you can actually sneakily find full PDF copies online now, which you can download and read. So this is a 235-page book that I've got a PDF copy just on this link in this PowerPoint for you today. I'm going to just copy that now and see if I can put it in chat for you so you could actually just get it up and maybe, you know, for a bit of bedtime reading tonight. Oh, I can't get it. I'll pop it up before we go. You could have a look at it. It's awesome. Yeah, so but what he talks about, and then there is a link at the end of this session today too, where there is a lovely lady who she talks about the 5 choices we have when we come into a conversation. So we have 5 choices. So we can be a giraffe that has a long neck and a big heart. And so we can really stick our neck out and have a big heart and listen and help and try and understand that person. or we can be a dolphin and we can eloquently just glide into the conversation and help that person and have a great conversation. Or we could be a meerkat and just sit still and wait. And when we wait, what we're saying to ourselves is, what am I thinking? Okay, so we sit and we wait because we're a bit overwhelmed by what's going on around us. So we go into our sentry pose of a meerkat and we go, all right, what am I doing here? And then there's a couple of other ones where we're a bit of a rhinoceros and we just bull by the horns and we fly straight in and we fire up. And so we've got these 5 choices anyway, and they're all depicted by animals. Anyway, nonviolent communication sort of stems from that. And I think it's just a really interesting and fun way to break down difficult communication, to think about it differently. But Judy Ringer, she has a bit of a checklist that she just sort of says to you, okay, if you've got to have a difficult conversation, first of all, warn the other person that you want to have a difficult conversation with them first. Don't blindside them, because guaranteed if you ever blindside someone and say, right, the reason I'm meeting with you today is because I think what happened yesterday wasn't okay and I need you to know my point of view and you're going to sit now and listen to my point of view. And this is where I think it all went wrong and this is what's going on today. Okay, so that's a difficult conversation because you're making something really awkward. Okay, that's you telling someone how to be. And so that's where Judy Ringer's checklist is really good, because it kind of just gets you to do a bit of a self-check to go, if you do want to have a difficult conversation, what do you want to get out of the conversation? What's your messaging that you're trying to get across? Are you okay to have that conversation, or are you a bit too tired? Should you schedule it for another week? What's going on with that? All that sort of stuff. So that's a good checklist as well. And then there's another couple in there as well that you might want to have a look at. But these are all great tools, quite user-friendly, not as overwhelming as some of them. But the thing about using a tool is, if you do use it in a conversation, it can stilt your conversation and make your conversation sort of not as authentic as if you did it naturally. But you've got to start somewhere, is my point of view on this. If you're not used to or 100% safe with having these sorts of really strong conversations, you've got to start somewhere. So start by using some of these tools to guide your conversations until your proficiency picks up, and then you'll find that you'll need them less. I hope that helps. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's like any skill. As we keep using, we don't use the checklist anymore, do we? I don't use the checklist anymore to make sure I can do our wound dressing. I just got really good at it. Now I don't need the checklist. So, yeah. So there is some great, also at the end of Judy Ringer's is she does give you a little, a script. That's it, a script. So you can actually fill in the words even. So that could even give you confidence if you have a base script there. Anyway, go to those links, knock yourselves out, guys. It'll be awesome. Now, I know we've only got 2 minutes left, so I just want to check in with you. Just a quick, do you think just this little 40 minutes today that we've had, is this going to help you just feel a bit more confident about difficult communication?
I have one question, Sue.
Yes.
Is around the communication online. Because we're all very online now, and so
you are correct.
Do you
know, I find the online communication, I do a lot of checking in. I find it sometimes takes me a long time, because sometimes, so when you get like a bit of a bombardment email that's sort of like blah, 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 and it's like so much to do in it, and you're just like, whoa, that's a lot. So what I'll do is I reply, then I actually go into that person's email and I write in another color. So my favorite color is always purple. So I respond to those big blocks of blah, and I go, can I just check in? do you want me to do this? Is that what you're asking here? Then I go down to the next point and I go, I'm happy to do this, but wondering, I have a bit of a busy workload at the moment and not sure of my capacity, would like to talk a bit more about this point. And I just go through each point so that I'm responding to each point. And then I send it. And then in my messaging, when I send the whole email back, I write a polite at the top, like, hello, Charlotte, thanks for your email. I was a bit puzzled / confused by some of it. So please bear with me as I have written a lot of notes in purple below in your original email. Would it be better for us to have a phone conversation about this? So then I try to shift them away from email to phone, just to get the context right, because we can get context real wrong on email. So these are my final thoughts for today. You know, and I really love the one by Anthony Robbins there, the quality of your communication is the quality of your life. You know, and I think when I used to work in prison, that was always so true. Yeah. And the second one is, no matter what job you have in life, your success will be determined 5% by your academic credentials, 15% by your professional experiences, and 80% by your communication skills. And isn't that another true reality? Like, I just find these little pearls of wisdom on the internet and I love it. So you have to suffer them. So thank you for suffering that. Now, the reference list is here. Now, there is some good books in there as well, which Compassionate Leadership, How to Do Hard Things in a Human Way. I've actually put the link to the Booktopia site there so you can read the review on that one. Might be something you might like to just consider. And How to Have Difficult Conversations at Work. It was written by the Harvard Business Review, and it's a quick, these are Harvard Business Review writes and publishes some really quick reads, which are good as well. And there's some things in there, but the things I would love you to watch is probably, if you've only got time to watch one, watch Louise Evans as she talks you through your 5 choices you have in every communication. So thank you for today. I really appreciate your time. I know I've gone a little bit over.